I'm not sure I've seen a game that's garnered reviews that are so polarized as Dragon's Dogma 2. Hang on, where's the 2? Did I install the wrong game? No, I didn't. This is a relaunch of the original Dragon's Dogma 1, set in an alternate reality, because the devs felt like the original came out at a time when the technology available wasn't able to deliver the dream and the vision that they had had. And the sad thing about that is, it still doesn't. Either that or their dream sucks. So when I say this game has been polarizing, what I'm referring to is the fact that the critics and the reviewers that got a game code released their review at game launch with rave reviews. Game of the Year contender, modern masterpiece, 10 out of 10. They creamed their pants over it. And then you have the reviews that have come out after release by those that bought the game. Awful, terrible single player microtransactions, infestation of filth. Why are these reviews collectively so dichotomous? Well, I'm going to try and talk about that, and add quite a few of my own thoughts on the game. The main things I want to talk about are story, gameplay and combat, graphical performance, microtransactions, and lastly, my own final thoughts. I'm going to avoid spoilers through this review, and all of my footage is only from my first 10 hours of gameplay. Dragon's Dogma 2 is a revamping of the original game, where we play as a chosen one, known as the Arisen. Each Arisen in history has been chosen by the Red Dragon as someone worthy of him to fight. The choosing process is fairly simple. The dragon rips out your still beating heart, swallows it whole, and by doing so, grants you resurrection as a heartless zombie, but with less of a need to eat brains, and more of an explanation of the gamification of respawning on death. Simply by being the fleshy incubator for the dragon's cardiac appetizer, you inherit the throne of the realm, as well as the undying loyalty of the Pawns, a race of dimensional traveling beings whose purpose in life is to serve the Arisen across the multiverse by talking a lot and falling off cliffs when the fancy takes them.
A few moments later.
So yeah, they're a cult. The problem is twofold. You've now got to kill this dragon who's destroying the countryside, and you've also got to try and take your throne back from the imposter Arisen. So that's the setup. And it's the definition of by the numbers. Chosen one, must defeat the dragon, become the sovereign, all that stuff. Side note, I cringed every time I saw the subtitle with Sovereign, S-O-V-R-A-N, yuck. I know that it's an old literary spelling of sovereign, but still, blah. The character selection finds us in jail, having been stripped of our memory and disposed of by the imposter Arisen in a labour mine. You choose whether to make a character yourself, or pick one that's been pre-made by the game devs. It's quite a solid character maker actually, despite trying to make a digital replica of myself, which those of you who actually know me know that I've done a fucking terrible job of it. I came away pretty impressed with the whole process. Apart from one thing, you can only play this game with one character. If you make a mistake in your game, or you don't like the character that you've built at the start, tough luck. There's no slots for more than one character, no new game. There's no do-over, at least not yet. There were a lot of complaints from the community, so this is being looked at in a future patch. So once that's all done, you choose your class from the 4 starting classes: Mage, Fighter, Thief, and Ranger. There's a mini-boss fight at the start that's pretty fun, and you make your escape in the chaos that ensues. The whole sequence is pretty derivative of the Elder Scrolls Oblivion and even Skyrim, and everywhere you venture in Dogma 2, you can feel their influence on the world that's been crafted. The game will introduce you to the pawn system. You'll be able to travel the world with a pawn who keeps pace with your level, and that you create to your liking. Yet another adventure through the character creator. I was playing as a melee thief, so I decided to make a ranger that looks exactly like Kate Beckinsale. I mean, the resemblance is uncanny. You fill the other 2 spots for a total of 4 in your party with pawns that other players have made. These ones don't level with you, so you will occasionally have to swap them out for new ones when you venture to bits of the world that out-level them. This is a cool idea, shared with the original game. You get to see all the cosmetic choices that other players have made, and you can benefit from the abilities and quest knowledge that those pawns have garnered from playing with their own masters. In fact, it's actually quite helpful when your add-in pawns say, "I know the way, master, follow me," because their own player had done that quest, and you can just follow them and skip the searching. They do have an unhealthy obsession with ladders though. It's kind of worrying.
This ladder can take us to new heights.
We ought to put it to good use.
What the hell are they doing to that ladder? The combat is the meat and potatoes of Dogma 2, and this seems to be widely accepted as really good. And I don't like it. The combat animations and some of the abilities are pretty good, I'll admit. And my favourite bit is the ability to climb some of the bigger enemies and hang on for dear life as you stabby stab their back until you're thrown off or your stamina bar empties and you're forced to let go. I think I started out thinking the combat wasn't too bad. As a thief, I was darting around, sweeping an attack and then ducking out of the way. One of the first mini-bosses you'll encounter is the fight with the combat camera. Playing as a fast-moving agility style of combat, I would constantly lose sight of the enemies. There's no lock-on camera, which I actually tend to prefer in games, and part of the issue was that I was using a skill that lets me slide through the enemy, slicing with my knives, and continuing past the model I'm fighting to the back of the area. So with the camera over the shoulder, I lose sight of the enemy unless I spin the camera and find my target again before launching my next attack. Now this attack is really quick. The amount of camera spinning needed to keep eyes on an enemy is nausea-inducing. It's also a little disorientating. You zoom past, deal the damage, and then there's a sense of,
where the am I?
it's a bit easier when there's multiple targets, but then it's mostly just button mashing because I don't know what I'm targeting until everything is dead anyway. In fact, a lot of the combat relies on kind of a momentum system. If you pile on the hits, lots of low enemies will just get staggered and they've got no ability to fight back. Similarly, if you're staggered, it takes a lot to win back the advantage in the combat scenario. Later on, I swapped classes to the Mystic Spear class, and it was a bit easier to understand what was going on, but I did become a little less agile. I didn't find the combat particularly challenging. In my first 10 hours, I didn't die more than a handful of times, and even when I did, it was mostly me just goofing off trying to bite off more than I could chew. Sure, there are places that clearly outlevel you, but following the story as I was meant to and fighting creatures at my level, or maybe slightly above, really wasn't too much of an issue. It might be that the thief is quite overpowered. The reason I started out thinking the combat was good, and then changed my mind, was due to the frequency. I was constantly trying to explore and experience the game world, but literally every few steps there's a new combat encounter with the same 4 enemies: goblins, harpies, wolves, or bandits. They're everywhere. Plus the placement often doesn't feel organic. They're just standing around in the forest, presumably talking about their favourite boy bands or whatever. It doesn't feel like they're ambushing you, more like the other way around. They don't come from the trees, they don't pop out of the ground. I'm specifically speaking about the goblins here. I'd be bothered if the wolves came out of the trees or they'd set an intricate set of rope traps. Maybe I'm expecting too much. But it is $107 Australian worth of game here, guys. This is the devs' supposed dream game. The pawns do a decent amount during combat, which was a nice change from the feckless AI of other games. The mage would imbue my weapon with fire. The fighter would tank as much as they can, and the archer was using crowd control abilities that I had outfitted her with. But there were so many examples of AI idiocy when you look deeper. The mage would yell, "Don't worry, I will heal you, master," and then pop an area heal that was nowhere near me, expecting me to stop what I'm doing and lope back to her like a kid at a playground who'd fallen off the monkey bars. How about a bit of customer service, huh? No f***ing 5-star Google review for you, Alice. When you and your party are hurt, not only do you lose health, but your maximum health also decreases. So even if you are healed, you won't get full maximum HP back. And it's worse the more you get hit. This was a little annoying, but I can see why it's been implemented. It forces you to utilize the camping feature, so you need to buy more camping gear in the microtransaction. It forces you to take a break and cook one steak. Just one steak, because it would be crazy to cook more than one steak for 4 people. Have you seen the economy we're living in? Jesus. It's far better for the other 3 steaks in our inventory to rot so we can make more lamp oil later. You do occasionally see the game wear its Eastern anime style on its sleeve, like when I found this G-string of infinite wisdom in a box that gave +1 to wedgies. It was quite powerful, and after wearing it a bit myself, I decided it was probably better on Kate Beckinsale. She didn't seem too thrilled at the prospect, but it was honestly a lot better for her attack power than her previous pants. Although we can outfit our characters with a good amount of combat abilities, the customization in terms of apparel and stats seems lacking. There are limitations on class clothing. A thief can't wear that hood, but can wear this one. Also, at least in the first half of the game, I haven't been able to equip any other style of weapon apart from the dual knives that I started with. Sure, I can get different styles of knives, but they're all double knives. How about a short sword or a piano wire? Something else. Maybe later in the game? you'll see pawns wearing the same thing repeatedly, because there's only a few items that are best in class. Also, when you level up, apparently we're too stupid to be trusted to allocate our own stats. Strength, vitality, dexterity. Weirdly, while Dogma 2 thinks you're okay to find vague quest instructions, it doesn't think you've got the brain power to allocate your own stats appropriately, and just does it for you. So your level 30 thief will have the same base statistics as my level 30 thief. Graphically, it's disappointing. Very occasionally, I would look out on a vista and be like, yeah, that's pretty nice. But really quickly, you'll notice obvious imperfections, like this halo effect over the water on the edge of my character model. God damn, that's hideous. Most of the environments and the cities aren't all that impressive, and this might be a little bit over harsh, but it's only slightly better than what we saw in The Witcher 3, which came out in 2015. I tweaked all the settings in various directions and it didn't come up much better. Like everyone and their dog, I had frame drops galore, particularly in cities. Although when I toggled every setting down to potato mode, I could get 30 frames and greater about 90% of the time. So while it's bad, I wouldn't describe the frames I experienced as unplayable by any means. I've seen footage of people in combat with spell effects and in cities where the NPC load is so extensive, with frame rates dropping below 20. And yeah, that's definitely unplayable. There's significant pop-in occurring in cities particularly, to the point where NPCs would materialize in front of my running character like an invisible obstacle course. Players report the performance in cities being almost unplayable, and mine didn't get quite that bad. I did, however, have to play this on my gaming laptop with an NVIDIA 3060 because my main gaming desktop with an NVIDIA 2070 Super couldn't get this playing at all. I tried updating my GPU driver, I tinkered with resolution, I tried windowed mode settings, I tried graphical settings, etc. As soon as I hit the start button, insta-crash. That's cool. So, if I only had my desktop, this review wouldn't have even happened. I would have refunded it through Steam straight away, and that would have been that. Keep in mind, this is 2 weeks after release date, so this may be fixed in future, or it may not. Quickly, I want to mention the music. I think they did a great job with the music. From the title screen to the music that plays during the combat encounters, I think this is one of the higher points of what was delivered. The voice acting is a bit variable. Some lines are delivered with practiced and believable ease, and others feel really stilted and awkward. So, running summary. Story is cliched and average. Gameplay and combat I found lackluster. Graphics and performance are garbage. And now we come to the area of the most contention, the microtransactions existing in a single player game. I want to preface this by saying I do not condone microtransactions. Anytime I've come across them in a game, I've vomited a little bit in my mouth. The exception is probably Helldivers 2, and the thing that saves it from my ire is the fact that you can earn the currency to buy all the stuff by simply playing the game, and it's fairly plentiful. The season passes are easily earned in the first few hours of playing. Also, the paid content is completely cosmetic, including the weapons, and I would argue that the weapons that come with the game are far better than the ones in the paid DLC content. Okay, so what about Dogma 2? There are microtransactions for teleport crystals, for the ability to change the aesthetics of your character, for resurrection stones, for a jail key, and for rift crystals, the currency that you use to hire more pawns. Now apparently all these items are available in-game later on, including the character editor, jail key, etc. In the first 20 hours of playing, I think I collected a total of about 4 resurrection stones. I managed a couple of teleport stones too. It's not like there's a tidal wave of these items coming my way, but even without specifically looking for them, I have found a few. I don't care about the aesthetic change because me and Kate are perfect as we are, and the rift crystals I could give two shits about because I seem to be flush with them just from adventuring. And if you hire pawns that are at your level or one level below, it costs you literally nothing. The one thing that kind of pisses me off is the teleport crystals. Supposedly, the devs' thoughts were that fast travel shouldn't be necessary if your game world is interesting enough. All previous games with fast travel systems are just lazy devs making a boring world. Really? So, put your money where your mouth is and don't have teleport crystals at all if you think this world is mesmerizing enough in its awesomeness, because I'm here to tell you, you are so wrong. There is so much backtracking and so much needless trash mob combat every 3 f***ing steps you take that I was begging for a teleport system. Every fairy stone I found, which is the teleport stone, was like finding a nugget of gold, because it was one more time I could skip past the endless goblin and harpy slaughter dance back to town to hand in to the quest giver. One more time I could avoid hearing, "I once knew an Arisen who had many visitors to his chamber, and all different..." Shut up! I don't give a fuck. For me personally, the exploration of the world and the trash mob combat was not interesting enough to want to run down the same paths multiple times. By my 20th hour, I was going crazy and ready to rage about the lack of an interconnected portal system. The only thing that is stopping players currently is the combat, which most feel is enough to keep them engaged. Not me personally. The amount of combat and the terrible camera angles I've seen has soured combat spectacularly. Just back onto the jail key thing briefly. I was doing a quest where I had to break a prisoner out of jail, which was patrolled by guards. I had an inside man who'd given me the jail key and let me in, but there were these two patrolling guards who clearly saw me looking through cells to find my target. They didn't seem bothered by my presence at all, so I thought, okay, they're in on it too. No, because a second later, I'd done something. Not sure what it was, but it really pissed them off, and after a brief fight, I was tackled and arrested. Thing is, they put me in a cell, stripped of my weapons and armor, and there was a prompt to suggest I should try and talk to the jailers to bribe my way out for half of my earned gold, which by then was about 25,000 coins. But why would I pay them when the jail cell key that I'd been given as a quest item was still in my inventory? How? I can only assume in the commotion of the arrest, my character had the foresight to pop the key in the old prison wallet before getting disarmed and detained. Even more hilarious was that after simply letting myself out, the guards were like, "How you doing? You alright?" Like it was all a big hazing ritual in the end. What the fuck? So after a bit, I made my way next door and let my target out of his cell, and again, zero fucks were given by the guards. What is this shit? So there you are, Dragon's Dogma 2. Or 1 redone, I don't know. There's definitely a few reasons I can see why people are liking this game. Maybe it's nostalgia for the first one. Maybe the combat system is their jam. It doesn't hold your hand in telling you where to go during quests, or how a lot of the systems work. And I actually appreciated that part of it. It doesn't spoon feed you like a lot of games released nowadays. There's stuff to explore if you're willing to spend the time. There's the appeal of tackling monsters bigger than yourself in the style of Shadow of the Colossus, which is pretty cool. Certainly nothing does that style of big monster combat in an open world like this. But for the few positives, I found that there are just too many overwhelming negatives in my experience of playing Dogma 2. The combat camera was awful. The pawns go between being very effective to being utter dumbasses. And the chatter gets tiresome.
Never have I encountered such a strategy. That was incredible. Never have I encountered such a strategy. That was incredible. Never have I encountered such a strategy.
The story is forgettable and derivative of every other RPG story ever told. The world exploration is interrupted constantly by crappy trash mobs that are very easily dealt with, but are so frequent it ends up spoiling quest completions and that real feeling of discovery. It's all just so meh. And for 108 Australian dollars no less. So, I don't know why the reviews are so different between critics and gamers. I think the biggest thing probably would be that the critics played the game before realising the microtransactions were present, and possibly before they'd played enough to get utterly bored of the repetitive trash mob combat. Hence the combination of the ability to climb big enemies, a brief flirtation with combat abilities, and the admittedly pretty good character customization gave an overall impression that this game was headed for widespread acclaim. Cut to the release, and the community being gobsmacked by a laundry list of microtransactions without the context of the majority of them not really affecting gameplay. And you get a backlash of epic proportions that's beaten the game into the position of mixed reviews, with comments saying that this game is already dead. If you don't know how I rate games I review, I give a green thumbs up to a game if I think it's a good time and worth full retail price. A yellow side thumb if I've got some concerns, but overall I think it's worth at least half price. Kind of a buy it on sale middle ground. And finally, a red thumbs down if I think the game is worth less than half the asking price. Initially, I felt I should give Dogma 2 the benefit of the doubt and give it a side thumb, meaning it's probably worth half price. More for the hope that with significant patches there would be something to redeem here. But for half the price, which is 54 Australian dollars, as it stands, it's just not worth it. There's so much that needs fixing at this point that I cannot in good conscience recommend it for even half price. There are definitely die-hard fans who loved the first, and to those people I would say watch the gameplay, and if you like what you see, then maybe get it on sale, but there's no way I'd recommend paying full price for this. There's just not enough that justifies it. And the deluxe edition at $122? Oh man, I pity everyone that paid that much money. If you haven't played The Witcher 3, just go get that instead. It may not classify as entirely open world, but it is a damn sight prettier, more immersive, and has side quests that are so well written and voice acted, it makes this game look like a steaming dog turd on the side of the road. In the end, I found Dragon's Dogma 2 such a disappointing entry, and I don't really have any other option but to give it a red thumbs down.
Never have I encountered such a strategy. Truly?